UFOs and paranormal espionage. And due to his unique experiences, Tony has found himself involved in some situations, let's say, that he didn't understand. He therefore does not have a conventional or normal life. He's filmed, or has been filmed, by unmarked helicopters. He's even been chased and attacked by UFOs. Welcome to Planet X, Mr. Tony Topping.
Hello, Neil. Welcome. Great to be on the programme. Put the mic near, lad, and you can hear me. Great to be on the show. Yes, all very true. And the attacks did happen, and the military helicopters did film me, and it's all been quite a crazy. Topping.com, and with that, certain things started to come out of the woodwork.
Okay, so let's go back. This all started in 1996.
Yeah, 96. It was my first. Well, it was 1996 when I first started having UFOs coming over my house, and then I decided in 1999 to put up a website, and that website was called etlife.co.uk. We put that up. And I discovered that when we put that up, I started getting strange phone calls. And I started getting helicopters coming over the house. There's some footage on my YouTube site of an actual helicopter coming in over the garden. And I remember coming back from my local town one day to discover that a helicopter had suddenly appeared and was actually filming me. And that was quite a spooky experience.
Now, I've just got to stop you there, because it is quite a normal experience in certain parts of Liverpool to have the police helicopter filming certain activities.
Altogether, this was probably something higher up the security classification ladder that was actually following me and doing what they were doing.
Let's go back to the UFOs. What were you actually seeing? Are these the disc shapes? Are they the angular shapes?
The UFOs that we were seeing typical balls of light UFOs, which I think are possibly crypto-terrestrial in nature. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them are possibly stealth aircraft of some description. Some of them are a kind of black operation stealth aircraft. But as Nick Pope has actually said in public, the Ministry of Defence know where they fly their classified craft, and they don't fly them in built-up areas. So we sent a piece of footage off for analysis to a special effects director who was special effects in Jurassic Park. He went and had a look and had an analysis of this particular UFO that illuminated a TV antenna, and actually concluded that it was indeed a UFO. It didn't have any Civil Aviation Authority strobing sequence, and it's that particular UFO incident that triggered all these strange events. I came to the attention of the wider media with my website, including Nick Pope, who in turn got me involved with Channel 4, and since then I've been in the media ever since, commenting on UFOs for TalkSport and the media like Sky and the BBC. So it's all taken off from there. But the harassment was not pleasant, Neil. It was not pleasant.
Talk us through some of that. What sort of harassment are we talking about?
We're talking quite simply about being followed in pubs. We're talking about strange phone calls. We're talking about strange phone calls telling you to keep quiet. All in all, in fact, we're talking about unaccountable bullying by an organisation that has no remit to do this, that is acting unlawfully, and it's something that I have to deal with for the rest of my life. A number of researchers have certainly been harassed, and I think you'll find, well, I don't know whether you want to play the clip, but there's a clip of Alec Newald, and what happens is that with this clip, this clip, Neil, because this clip appears to get debunked by the media. I had an incident on one of the national radio stations a few years back where this clip was debunked, and it nearly got debunked only last week by another popular radio broadcaster, but luckily, on second thoughts, he wasn't trying to debunk it, he was just trying to make it humorous.
Okay, now this is a guy who is from New Zealand.
Correct.
He was a contactee, which means that he was...
CE5 encounter, yeah.
Right, what does for our listeners who don't know that?
Which is obviously basically full-blown extraterrestrial contact, driving down the road in Auckland, New Zealand, and then next minute he knows it's 10 days later and he can't remember anything of what happened to him. Cut a long story short, he had a knock at the door from the Australian Defence Research Organisation and the Royal Institute of International Affairs, wanting to confiscate his car because it had been subjected to high electrical impulses. And so this is the kind of the food and fare of researchers like myself and others who are being harassed, but this gets debunked by the mainstream media quite a lot. So when you play this, Neil, we'll probably have men in dark suits in the next studio ready now to block the clip even as we speak on City Talk.
Let's give it a try, see if we can get away with playing this clip.
It seems to be a group of people on this planet that want to make life difficult for anybody that cares to tell the truth to their neighbours, if you like, to fellow humans. And I met up with a group of very nasty people that seemed to know more about my adventure than I did. And their first manoeuvre manoeuvre was to try and extract information from me any way they could, even basically lying about their identity and who they represented. I soon found out that they couldn't be who they said they were, and then when I wasn't forthcoming with any information, they proceeded then to try and make sure that I didn't talk to anyone else about it. And they threatened me in no uncertain manner, both physically and mentally.
And this is in nice, quiet New Zealand.
This is in, yes, I felt I was living in a third world country, to tell you the truth, Barry.
And they were New Zealanders? They weren't men in black with American accents or anything?
Well, one of them had a British accent for sure, and
a British accent.
It would appear that he was working for a UK-based covert agency, which very few people know about, and it's not MI6, it's beyond that, I think. And he was perhaps escorted or in collusion with some form of operation in New Zealand, which were probably just backing them up with manpower, I guess. They wouldn't know too much about what was going on. But anyway, these people were not nice. No. That would be the politest thing I could say.
There we go. There's a clip from a contactee, an ET contactee from New Zealand, an Alec Newald. Before we go back to Tony, I think, Dan, you wanted to say something?
On the harassment there, Tony, and it was something that was picked up in that audio that we just heard there. Men in Black is one of the most famous and one of the most interesting parts of the whole UFO experience, and while you've been being harassed, is that consistent with what you've experienced in that whole phenomena, or is it something more?
Have you seen the sorry to cut you, have you seen the movie Inception?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Well, that's the kind of environment you're dealing with all this. It's very advanced dream warfare technology. And oddly enough, back to the Men in Black, there's a very interesting clip on YouTube filmed on a hotel security camera of actual Men in Black wandering into a hotel and looking for somebody who had a UFO encounter. So the thing is that the conditions of the cover-up are very serious. There's a very serious and sinister cover-up going on out there, which I think is linked to the globalists and international banking.
Being someone who's actually experienced this, where do you think this is coming from? There's lots of theories about Men in Black, who they are, where they come from, or just general harassment of UFO experiences in general. What's your feeling on where it's coming from?
There's a possibility that the origin of them, it might be crypto-terrestrial, as in kind of alien but to Earth, and mankind hasn't really kind of discovered what's going on there. And there's a possibility that they are possibly time travellers, or there's a possibility that they are aliens. They are extraterrestrials, and they are trying to keep anybody who has UFO experiences, especially in the 1950s and 60s, when the Men in Black were on the rampage, they were there trying to keep people quiet. So it's a very serious situation, and it does. I mean, if you don't mind, Neil, there is a clip of the NASA scientist, which I'd love the listeners to hear, if that's possible, maybe just briefly, because he's had to cover up his name. I know who he is. He's a NASA scientist, but he's had to actually change his name in this interview and call himself Mike. Now, the thing is, he was working on propulsion calculations. He was having a hell of a job on with them, and he had extraterrestrial encounters, and they assisted him in resolving these propulsion calculations. He's actually, even on the internet, he does have a book to do with propulsion calculations. The thing is that we can't name him.
Is he still with NASA?
Yes, he's still with NASA. The thing is that we can't name him because the conditions are unsafe. People's safety are at risk from this situation, from UFOs and the actual cover-up. And it appears that peaceful interaction with UFOs and aliens appears to be oppressed. But as you'll see later in the program, as we look at India, there's some amazing information coming out of that.
We'll talk about that in the next hour.
Indeed.
Just going back to this guy who works with NASA.
Yeah.
You're saying that he's worked with extraterrestrials or alien entities. Is that through his work with NASA? Is that at NASA, or is that outside of the work environment?
He was actually on the road with his girlfriend. So he says when an actual UFO came in front of him, somebody emailed me to indicate who he was, what his name was, and sure enough, he is there.
Let's play it though, because we're running out of time because we've got the news coming up. So let's have a little bit of this. This is a guy, as Tony says, it's not his real name, Mike, but he works for NASA. Have a listen.
I don't know what they are. First of all, I have to tell the audience out there that from my experience, I'm a very, very sane person, and I have I'm just very well established in what I do, so I'm not a fringe case at all. Actually, I'm
not at all.
are the establishment, unfortunately, but it's hard to say what these things are. They certainly exist. There's no doubt about that. I definitely saw them with my friend. She was there. She chooses not to remember it too clearly as time goes on, as people do in shock experiences. But
yes,
it definitely happened. It definitely had a coincidence with the major scientific work. So I say to myself, what are they? Well, my inclination is they may not be. One is tempted to say they're space travelers, but I would tend to doubt that. My gut feeling is that they might be some kind of life form that exists in alternate dimensions from ours, and they may actually be time travelers as well, which they could be from the future or from the past. And their role, I believe, is to affect our civilization by making contact with various people who are in various situations to do things that can work for the betterment of our society and world as a whole to move it forward. They do work in very discreet ways, and I would be fascinated to know how many people who are in strong positions in our world have stories like this. I'm sure you're never going to hear them. But I think their role is to help the world and to make it move in a better way. This discovery, I could, of course, go on and on about what it is, and it certainly has a strong bearing on a lot of different things. But the discovery itself has a strong sign. If you could put a sign on it, the sign would be, this discovery is meant to open our awareness as the new way to do things. And,
yes.
And I think that these entities, that's their job, is to sort of help us along to do new things in key ways to sort of move our society forward. And where they come from is probably, it could be another dimension. It could be from the future or the past. They could very well be time travelers. There's no reason to believe from the laws of physics you can't do time travel. There's been research papers written, and in fact, it is consistent with Einstein's theory of relativity that time travel can in fact happen, although it's very difficult to do with our technology today, but it's not inconceivable in the future this could happen. But there's so much about the universe we don't know. There are 400 billion stars in our galaxy alone. There's trillions of galaxies. We think that you can't go to stars now. Our closest star is Alpha Centauri, and it takes 100,000 years to get there if you want to go there in the space shuttle. So therefore, people say, well, travel between the stars is clearly impossible, but it may be that some discovery will make it very easy to do. If that's the case, then there'd be all kinds of entities traveling all over the place that we have no idea about. I think it's difficult to speculate what these things are. They're clearly much more advanced than we are. They can clearly influence us in ways like this I described in this interview, which we have no understanding about. To what it seems like magic, it seems very unusual, weird, and that's because we're just not used to it. But it's obviously, they obviously represent something which I hope is here to do good for this planet.
There we go. There's an interview with a real government scientist. His name is not Mike. Obviously, we're reusing that name not to get him into a whole heap of trouble. And he does really work for NASA. Tony, that was the clip that you suggested to us.
Indeed.
Tell us a bit more about him.
Well, I'd first like to just commend the radio station for playing all these clips, because some of them have been heavily debunked before now in their entirety, so you're to be commended for that. What he's talking about there is what the extraterrestrials are all about, and the fact that they assisted him in discovering equations to space travel, which is what he actually specialises in, and I saw the evidence of his work to do with space travel. So that's what he's actually talking about, and that the extraterrestrials helped him with that.
You're listening to Planet X. Our special guest for the show is Tony Topping. Dan, I know you've got a question on Facebook, but I don't think we're going to get time before the news. But just give us the details if anyone who has got any comments about this UFO subject, or indeed anything a bit weird and paranormal. What do they need to do to get in touch with the show?
Well, they can get onto the Planet X website, which is www.planetxlive.co.uk. Join the forum. Use the topic questions for the show there to ask questions or post comments about the show. Or you can use the social networking sites, Twitter and Facebook. For Twitter, it's at Planet X Live 105, and search for the group on Facebook, Planet X City Talk 105.9, and post your comments and questions there.
Okay, we're coming back with more from Tony Topping, more from our Planet experts Dan and Steve Mera as well. And we'll also be joined in the next hour for a fairly lengthy chat to the police detective and one of the finest UFO researchers in the country at the moment, Mr. Gary Heseltine. He's on the way just after the 9 o'clock news. Don't go anywhere. It's Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
This is City Talk 105.9.
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Do not be afraid. We are now in control of what you hear.
1, 2, 3, testing.
A journey to the far reaches of knowledge and the unknown.
I can't believe I just saw that.
From aliens to angels, conspiracies to cover-ups.
One soul and preeminent power.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth.
I'll try to explain as much as I can.
You're listening to Planet X. Planet X, exclusive to City Talk 105.9.
Welcome back to Planet X and our UFO special. I'm Neal Atkinson, and you're listening to City Talk 105.9. And the next hour, it's more UFOs. Thank you to everybody who's been getting in touch with the show. I'll give you the details and the numbers in just a little while, but Dan, you've got some interesting reaction on Facebook.
Yeah, we've got a comment here from Steve Johnson, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Good old Steve, the man who dreams the future.
Indeed, and he said he's just a comment saying that scientists are in agreement that for every grain of sand on every beach of the Earth, there are a million stars. Lots of stars, that is. There are billions and billions of planets. Chances say there's bound to be life out there. Surely it would be naive to presume that there isn't. Great show tonight, and he loves it. We've got a question for Tony as well from John. He says, can I ask about the Project Blue Beam holograms that are to be used to disguise nuclear missiles as flaming meteorites just in time for Ragnarok, which I believe is a Norse, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, Norse festival,
Norse
is it?
festival, or...
Yeah.
It seems that there's two camps going on with the UFO situation. There's the esoteric, occult kind of cover-up that's going on behind the scenes, and this is coupled with governments who are denying it, but are actually making every effort possibly to try and ascertain extraterrestrial technology. So Project Blue Beam with the hoax UFO invasion stuff and all that kind of thing. I'm going to say no, I don't think it's happening. What I am going to say is that there's going to be possibly certain nations in the world that you wouldn't expect are going to start disclosing information, regardless of the international cabal that is out there trying to stop it. That's my take on it, anyway.
That's a nice little tease, because we're going to leave that till the end of the show. But Tony's got some information, and I don't think not a lot of people know about this. It's not widely available.
It's certainly an interesting question about Project Blue. It's not the first time holographic things have been used. I mean, even just during the Second World War, the Germans were using it to, for propaganda reasons and actually putting things up in holograms into the mist, thinking of Dover, so people, all the captors will see the image of Dover and think, oh, of course, let's change course. And of course, it's a long thing. It's been going on, and the experiments have been done on it, and people, it does work. It certainly works.
Talking about Nazi Germany as well, I mean, there's been lots of stories that they were very close just before the end of the war of developing their own source of technology. How close were they? Yeah,
well, I mean, Nazi Germany, for example, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, it wasn't actually perhaps Nazi Germany that recovered the first UFO, because I would go with Mussolini, who was the first world leader to recover a UFO, and he formed something which was the equivalent of Majestic 12 called Cabinet RS-33, but there are rumours that Germany was recovering UFOs from Poland in 1938, and as early as that, and so, yes, indeed, the Nazis were investigating UFO technology. And yes, indeed, after the war, the US government were very worried about it, as were the British government, who even went to Antarctica on secret operations to hunt down the Nazis in their UFO base. And that was called Operation Tabalan, which is documented.
And as far as I know, and guys, you can give me the stats and the research on this, but from what I've read, the scientists who were working on these sort of projects would then hastily taken to America, and they worked on a lot of the rocket programs.
Yeah, mostly the Apollo
programs.
Werner von Braun and Project Paperclip.
That's it.
It's interesting, apparently, because as some people claim, the witnesses claim that on his deathbed he actually said that our next world war will be with them from outer space.
Indeed.
You know, so it's certainly interesting. But I have to pose a question to Tony, because I didn't get a chance earlier, is that what did he initially do to gain that much interest from, you know, from the watchers, should we say? I'm just curious what kicked it off.
Yes, just by the way, if you've just tuned in, we were talking earlier when we introduced Tony. Tony started to attract a lot of attention from mysterious secret agents and agencies.
That is true. That is absolutely. I make no apology for saying that. I'm not making it up. It's not an act of paranoia. That it's very worrying constitutionally in a democracy that is happening. But back to your question, I'd be lying if I said I knew, because I don't. And that's what I'm.
I was really curious because we didn't say. You see,
no, I don't know. But
had you done something you didn't want to say?
No. Oh well, that happened. Oh yeah. That's all in it. But it's not. I mean, we'd need probably a whole other radio show to explain all that.
Oh, well, I can certainly vouch for Tony. You know, he was obviously investigating military black helicopters around about 1999. There was a spate of them across the country. I was thick into black helicopters myself over Manchester at that time. I also got confirmation from Boeing and McDonnell Douglas that there were experimental AH-64s which were in operation with high-pressure cabins, and they were being utilised by the police. Of course, across the country in 1999, these things didn't exist. The police wouldn't even confirm that they were actually being helped by them occasionally. And I know that they were storing some of them at Aberporth. Aberporth as well, and I know that they put some field radiation or something through some of the actual netted wires to stop photography reasons. And then there's a lot, and we got into a real hefty case with that. But I also know that the conspiracidal of things is that I got involved in Menwith Hill many years ago. And of course, I've been down that road, I've been watched, I've had the mail gone through, I've had my phone, you know, listened in on. I had that checked by British Telecom as well, an automated thing to find out if it was being accessed by remote source, and this is going back many years ago. So, and I know, basically, I can tell you the reasons why that was, is because I took photographs of a facility that you're not supposed to, and I sent them to a general at Fort Meade, Maryland, you know, and that obviously got a bit worried, ended up on a bit of the MOD list, and they wanted to know who I was. So they did I understand the reasons why they can do that. There are obviously these people that get involved and start following and stuff, but they're really interested in who we really are. That's
the famous unofficial sort of ufology place that everyone talks about is Area 51 over in the States. But Steve and Tony, you'll probably know this as well. We do actually have some strange facilities over here on our very own shores.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That don't officially exist.
Well, yeah, there's a number of... Well, just like I just said, Menwith Hill, haven't I? I mean, of course, everybody, but, you know, somebody who doesn't know the area won't know about it, but it's an amazing facility. It's an early listening facility, but it's been allegedly been listening into, tapping into phones and communications, and they were taken to court over one time, but a major UFO incident took place once there. I think that was in the 70s. A landed craft was seen, and apparently the people that witnessed it, they came out, they were visited by, again, officials, claiming to be government type, and asked only want to know is, when you saw this UFO on the ground, how did the door open? You know, and that was a really odd question to ask, isn't it, really? But things have been sighted there, and it's an amazing facility, and there's lots of facilities around the country, like, you know, what's been allegedly associated with UFOs, like Rudloe Manor and many other places.
Tony Topping is one of our special guests. We're going to be speaking to Gary Heseltine in just a little while. We're doing a UFO special on Planet X tonight. I've got a question, and we'll have to try and get him on the phone one of these days, but Tony, the taxi driver, has been asking about the satellites. Now, of course, the satellites went up in the 60s. He wants to know, did they go up to sort of benefit society down here, or is there a wider agenda? Are they looking out there? Is there weapons involved with the satellites? What's your take on it?
Office and NSA, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
And the thing is, I'm sure you'll agree that the National Security Agency, it is said that more of their satellites are looking outwards, away from Earth, than looking down. Would you?
Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, I do know that around about the early 60s, I know that there was a number. I won't mention the general's name, but there was obviously research documentation out there for it, that he signed off on the fact that weapon satellites would be placed into orbit, and these were to shoot down any foreign vehicles. Now, take into that consideration, okay, you could say, well, is it satellite from another country? But foreign vehicles covers the whole spectrum. Anything which is that you do not understand what it is.
Yes.
And there were 3 projects, and I think it was Gemini, Moondust, and Bluefly, and they were all associated with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in America. One project was to basically bring down this object. The second operation was to retrieve this object. subject. Third one is to investigate it right Patterson Air Force Base, where allegedly Project Blue Book was run from a little room, no bigger than this, actually, Tony. You know, it was a tiny little room, and it was just a big farce, all Project Blue Book, to just cover it over. But at the end of the day, you know, there's enough documentation, official government documentation already out there to say that we started the weaponising space in the 1960s, so don't start thinking it's all happening all of a sudden.
And may I just add there, Neil, that when they formed Majestic 12, unbeknown to Majestic 12, Wright-Patterson and the CIA, the FBI and the Office of Air Force Investigation, which is I was looking at an organisation called the Collins Elite, which is actually to do with psychic espionage, and they were not aware that Majestic 12 were looking into UFOs, and they, the Collins Elite, were looking into UFOs. You had two major agencies in America who didn't know they didn't know each other existed.
Side by side,
they actually did not, and it's quite amazing.
Tony, the taxi driver, posed the question. Tony, I hope you're pleased with that answer. Do keep your text and your calls coming in. 0151 708 1059 if you'd like to get on the phones, get through to Big Dave, our producer. You can tweet us, but I don't do the tweet thing. Dan, what's the tweet thing? Is it Planet X Live 105?
It is at Planet. You got to get the at in.
Oh right,
that's
okay.
The tweet thing. I don't know what that's all about, but apparently it's important. At Planet X Live 105, and of course Facebook is Planet X for hash City Talk 105.9.
Talking to the Facebook, we were talking about the security camera capturing Men in Black after a UFO sighting. That's actually on the Facebook page now, so if you want to check that out, that's there. There's also some great stuff on the website planetxlive.co.uk, and you can text as well. Let me just do a quick text while I have the time. It's 61025. Always start your message with the word talk and then send it off to 61025. I'm going to say hello to Claire Southworth. Claire, thank you so much for getting in touch. Just on the subject of what we were talking about in the last hour with Alan Bates, the regression therapist. She says, I would love to be regressed by Alan. My mum was a subject of Joe Keaton, who is a local pioneer of regression in the 80s. Great show, guys. Thank you, Claire. We'll put you on the list. You could be one of our volunteers next week. Right, a couple of other things that I want to mention. Now, Tony, you've got some interesting things coming up towards the end of the show, which we're going to touch on as well.
Yeah.
But first of all, before we get into that, we're going to speak to Gary Heseltine in a minute. Before we do that, let's tell you about a little bit of a competition that we've got planned that we're going to be doing. And I thought it'd be nice to launch it on today's show because it is a UFO special. And we've got a big conference coming soon in June. Would you like to come with us? Here's the details. A theme tune, what a film as well. We're playing this because we're giving you the chance to win tickets to the ET Communication Conference, the Extraterrestrial Communication Conference, which is in Liverpool on Saturday, June the 30th this year. And we're also going to throw in a night stay in a very nice local hotel. So maybe if you're listening online and you're not from round these parts, we'll also throw in a hotel as well. It's going to be a cracking day, and we're lucky enough to be hosting it. We're going to be down there hosting the whole conference. But some great speakers down there. We've got Dan Sherman from America. David Griffin is going to be speaking, as well as Richard D. Hall. Also Mike Oram and Miles Johnson, who are all going to be guests over the next few weeks. All right, so they're all going to be coming on this show just to give you a taster of what they've got planned at the ET Communication Conference taking place at the Static Gallery on Roscoe Lane. Now, if you'd actually like to buy some tickets, you can go on our website, which is planetxlive.co.uk, and there's a great little link there which will take you through to the actual website. Anthony Beckett and the gang are putting the event on, and it'll take you through to their website for the Extraterrestrial Communication Conference in Liverpool on Saturday, June the 30th, 2012. But you could also win some tickets as well.
E.T. home phone. E.T. phone home.
Oh my God, he's talking.
Oh. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home.
No, you don't have to phone ET. You don't have to phone in or anything like that. None of that. All you've got to do, it's absolutely free of charge. You've just got to go to the website and join the forum. If you want to win tickets to the ET communication, there's no phone calls, there's no texting, there's no emailing. Just get online, planetxlive.co.uk, and just stick something on the forum. What we'll do is we'll make a draw in about a month's time. Okay, so at the end of May, everybody who's been on the forum for the whole of May will get entered into the draw, and you could win your tickets to the ET Communication Conference in Liverpool on Saturday, June the 30th. We'll be there. Don't let that put you off, because they've got, as I mentioned before, some great speakers. And more information online on planetxlive.co.uk. Right, let's get back to our next guest. He was on the phone actually last week. We were talking about his little debate with our favourite Chris French, on this morning. And I'm pleased to say he's going to spend a little bit more time on the phone. And I think he's going to come up when he's actually doing the conference in August. He is a police detective and one of the leading UFO researchers in this country, and if not the world. On the line is Gary Heseltine. Gary, welcome to Planet X.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Now, let's just talk about you and the beginning first. How long ago, take us back, when all this first started, because you were in the police and you're still serving in the police, and you're looking into UFOs.
Yep.
When did it all start?
Well, it began with a childhood sighting in 1975 in my hometown of Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire. If you want, I'll tell you this quick story.
Absolutely, yeah, go for it.
Right, well, basically, I was walking my then-girlfriend home. It was a lovely August night. It was balmy night, all stars out, no clouds whatsoever. And we were walking along a narrow footpath in total darkness, and on the left side, there were my comprehensive school field, and on the right side there was a large allotment. And basically, as we were walking along the path, we noticed a big bright white light, bigger than any of the stars, moving from our right to left. And we watched it. It was silent. And then suddenly, as it passed in front of us, and therefore went past us, and therefore we were behind its flight path, there was a power cut in the distance. The whole area was plunged into darkness. I had my cycle with me at the time. I said, get on the bike. I'm going to drop you off at the end of the alleyway, and I'm going to try to take a shortcut, because it was going in the general direction of my home, very slowly. That's what I did. Two of us on the bike, Kroger in it, to Lincolnshire turn. We rode down the alleyway. I literally dropped her at her house, which was a couple of streets away from there, went back down the same alleyway, pedal like mad, and I ended up going on a street called Grange Lane South, which was the long road that went towards my home. And I got to a strange, bizarre situation where, in the distance, I could see that the power was on in the housing. So you can imagine going from a distinct section of housing where it's total power cut in total darkness, and then in the distance I can see that the power is still on. I'm racing along down the Grange Lane South, and just as I get onto a bend near to my home, I'm going into the light, so going from total darkness into power, into the light, street lamps and everything, and over my right shoulder the object was now behind me slightly, and so therefore I'd gone ahead of it. I went round two more corners, dropped my bike at the house. I rushed into the living room and said to my parents, who were having a cup of tea, supper time, and said, come outside, I think there's going to be a power cut. And they basically looked at me, bemused, as you would. They didn't get up, unfortunately, so I then ran through the hall, through into the kitchen, out the back door, into the backyard, looked back at my semi-detached home, just in time to see the object passing over the rooftop. It'd gone a bit higher in altitude. Now, I put my arm directly above my head, straight above my head, and guess what? No sooner did that object pass by me, and therefore I was then behind its flight path, and the entire area at that second was plunged into darkness. Now, how could I predict a power cut? You can't. And it's at that point I figured that that object from a second geographical position had to have had some kind of interaction with the power grid, and that's where it all started.
And that's where your fascination with UFOs began. What about working in the police? Obviously, the skills that you've learnt in the police have come in very handy for this type of work.
Well, you'd like to think so. Put it this way, what I've been a police officer nearly 23 years. I've been a detective for about 18 and a half, 19 years. I've worked on all manner of inquiries, murder, manslaughter, rape, etc. I know what evidence is, and one of the things that drew me into active research was the frustration at the way the media portrayed credible witnesses, i.e. Pilots, etc., air traffic controllers, radar specialists, and it was all trivialised, and I felt increasingly drawn to get involved. And the question was, well, what could I do to make a difference? Obviously, as a detective, time is not always your own, and when there's something serious, you can work all the hours under the sun. And therefore, I kind of had to come up with an idea what I could get involved in. It had to be on my terms. And then suddenly I went to bed one night, sounds corny, but I had a dream, woke up with the idea to create a database of police officers. I mean, police officers, I was aware through a few historical book references about some incidents involving the UK police officers. So I then went to Graham Birdsall, who was the late editor of the now famous defunct magazine, UFO magazine, and basically said, I've had this idea for a database for police officers. Would you let me write an article? And he said yes, because obviously being a police officer, he thought that would add credibility. And so in January 2002, I wrote my very first article. I'd never written anything of any note up to that point. And sure enough, once it was established, officers, mainly retired in the beginning, began to contact me. It wasn't a flood, but it was certainly a regular trickle, a bit of a stream, shall we say.
Do you find, Gary, that people do leave it until they've retired or they've left either the service, or even with pilots, they are going to get ridiculed if they're still operating, say, as a pilot? Is that the case?
Well, I would certainly say that probably 3/4 of the people on the database are retired who have got their pensions and who feel less threatened, shall we say. Not threatened as in physical force, but threatened for their careers. There are two main reasons why professional people or any witness doesn't come forward, and that's very palpable, and that is fear of ridicule, which is very palpable, and a perceived risk to their career. And that I've had communications, talked to architects, doctors, etc., who contacted me and said, I'd love to come forward, but I can't because I'd be struck off, or I'd just be kind of like be ridiculed. So it's very palpable, and that unfortunately has been created entirely by the media, very successfully. I'd have to say it goes back 60 years. It harks back to the decision taken in America in 1948 after the estimate of the situation had concluded in 47 to 48 that UFOs were most likely interplanetary. General Vandenberg basically said, I'm not taking that to the president, destroy all the copies, etc., etc. And then after that, Project Sign became Project Grudge, new staff, totally change in emphasis, and it was then let's debunk everything. And pretty much after the Robertson panel in 1953, actively engaged with the media organisations to play this subject down. And you'd have to say...
We've lost Gary. Has he been cut off? Is there a conspiracy against Gary Heseltine?
It's fascinating what he's saying.
Absolutely.
Though,
we're going to try and get him back on the line, but we'll take a quick break in just a moment. Dan, did you want to jump in with that?
Draw attention to Gary's website for the people who haven't seen it. It's actually an amazing resource of information of what Gary was just saying, the most credible kind of evidence and the most credible kind of sightings. It's called Prufos Police Database, and It's PRUFOS, PRUFOS, policedatabase.co.uk, and it's UFO sightings reports by serving and retired British police officers, and it's just jam full of really good stuff.
Okay, we'll get that on the website and we'll get it on Facebook as well. We'll take a break and hopefully, fingers crossed, if the Men in Black haven't got him, we'll be back with Gary Heseltine and our UFO special next on Planet X.
The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X on City Talk 105.9. Planet X online, on your mobile, on City Talk 105.9.
Welcome back to Planet X. I'm Neal Atkinson. We've got our special guests in the studio. We've got Tony Topping. We've got our Planet experts, Dan the Man, and also Steve Mera from Phenomenat magazine. And just before the break, we were talking to Gary Heseltine. He's back on the line. Gary, are you there now?
I'm there now. That was pretty weird because I've got a full signal. And I've never, ever been cut off on a radio show before. So if you were conspiracy theorists, that get your thinking caps on. But that was bizarre.
We might get a visit from Will Smith in reception later. The Men in Black could be here. They could be on their way.
Ironical when I'm talking about actual facts and figures of the Robertson panel, the estimate of the situation, which are critical facts that the media tend to overlook, but are historical facts.
Very ironical. We've got a couple of our Planet experts in the studio. Dan, the web man, has got a little question for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, Gary. We were just talking before at the break about the nature of police officers and credible witnesses in UFO sightings, and it's not just that a police officer is a pillar of the community, it's that you're actually trained in observation. Can you comment upon that?
Well, I'm not saying that every police officer is incapable of making a mistake, because that isn't true. We're all humans are fallible. What I'm saying is that a police officer, by the very nature of their training, is taught how to record things in a chronological, logical fashion, in the sense of that whatever a police officer goes to, he knows that he will have to write it up in his police pocketbook, and that has to be presented in court. And so it has to be legible, it has to be common sense, and so he is taught how to look for certain things. He is aware, trained and told that he is aware that people's perceptions vary. For example, you can have a burglar run down a street carrying a television, and 4 people along that street in different houses may see somebody running, and they'll all describe the person maybe with a red jumper, red shorts, the black, the white. But the bottom story that's consistent is that somebody ran down the road with a television. And that's the key point. But people's perceptions do change. Police officers can make mistakes. But one thing that I've highlighted, and I'm not a big lover of statistics, but over the 10 years of my research now, I now have over 400 cases involving over 900 British police officers, and 72%, i.e. nearly three-quarters, are multiple officer accounts. So that's over 300 cases where it's 2 or more officers. And this totally kind of contradicts what the sceptics would like the public to believe, that these officers are mistaken. Now, some of them may be mistaken in multiple sightings. People can make genuine errors. But what I'm saying is the percentage of mistakes, I believe, goes down dramatically depending on the quality of the observer. For example, if you're a pilot, I would say that probably something like 80% of cases reported by pilots where they're saying it's a UFO, that's as high as it gets. And probably a police officer is probably down 50-55% collectively. Now, the general perception and agreed figure across the board for UFO sightings per se is 5% remain unknown, and then with a bit more investigation, that probably figure goes down to 3%. Well, that's 3% across everybody in the world. but let's look in the high caliber witness categories. I would say pilots are up there at 80%. So if a pilot says a UFO silver disc flew around my airplane 3 times, flew with me for 400 miles, it was on ground radar, airborne radar, he saw it, his navigator saw it, his co-pilot saw it, and in fact other aeroplanes coming the other direction over the North Sea, etc., saw it, ground and airborne, then it's real and it's ET, and it's as good as that.
You're listening to Planet X. Our guest on the phone is Gary Heseltine. We've got a question from Steve, one of our Planet experts. Steve.
Evening, Gary. I was just asking, you know, obviously because of the demise of the interest from the Ministry of Defence now, they claim obviously to the general public that they don't obviously take an interest in receiving information regarding UFO sightings now. What did the police actually do now? I'm just curious, you know, did he actually still keep any documentation regarding people reporting UFOs?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because when the MOD closed the UFO desk in 2009, it was very sudden, unannounced, and when that happened, I immediately thought, well, what are police officers and police forces going to do with that information that they're still going to get? People are still going to report sightings to the police. What are you going to do with it? You have to be professional, you have to treat people properly, and all control rooms are recorded, video-wise, audio-wise, and so I thought, what are they going to do? So what I did is I wrote to, as it turned out, 38 police forces in the UK, including my own force, and requested that, I pointed out what had happened and said, would you consider sending me those reports? And basically what happened was, because I mentioned my own force in that letter to each of the chief constables, even though I made it clear I was acting as a private individual, in a private capacity, I declared that I was a police officer with my force. Later on, that came back to haunt me, because my chief constable didn't like the fact that I'd said I belonged to a certain force, and I ended up getting a 12-month written warning just for writing letters to the Ministry of Defence. However, here's the irony, is of those 38 forces, 24 forces wrote back and said, oh, thanks very much, we weren't aware of this, we'll put it to strategic planning, we'll get back to you. And then 2 forces came back to me and said, we're going to adopt you as a single point of contact and refer cases. However, that was just before I got disciplined. And what I do know is my own force put out an email to every force that I'd written to saying he had no authority to do that. Well, I would still argue that as a private individual, and I made it clear it was a private letter. But so the bottom line is I got 12-month written warning. That has passed. But the bottom line is I cannot reveal now to the media which force I belong to, even though I've said to them that it's out there in the public domain. And have been for years when I didn't have any kind of interference. And it's one of the reasons why I shall probably retire early next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly good foresight. I mean, I was obviously wondering how what do people do now? Because, as you said, reports aren't just going to stop, are they?
Well, the bottom line is you can guarantee that at the time in 2009, UFO reports were on something like a 10, 20-year high. So they're still going to get them, and indeed I have had 1 or 2 referrals since after that, and I know, and I've actually got documentation in terms of police log from one force where it says contact DC Heseltine, blah, 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 who runs an unofficial national database for police officers. So I'm in the mix there, but I think it will change slightly when I retire.
Gary, we're running out of time, so before the authorities cut you off again, just a quick one from me. You've been in the business of investigating UFOs and ufology for quite a while, and you've dealt with so many big cases, of course, the Rendlesham as well, which we haven't got time to go into. But is there anything current or anything that's come out which is exciting you and has got your sort of juices flowing?
Well, I'm not going to say too much, but I've had some very interesting information from a senior officer about Rendlesham that could be very interesting, but I need to authenticate it.
Okay, so hopefully when you're up in August, you'll know more.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Now,
all right.
Yeah, Gary, you are coming up in August. Just tell us quickly about that.
Well, I will be doing a lecture on police sightings, or in fact I'll do anything that anybody wants me to do about the subject. I'm passionate about the subject. I'm also going to be up in June for the Rendlesham reunion, doing under Captain Robert Salas, who's putting the conference together. So I'll be doing a lecture there in Woodbridge, and in a couple of weeks' time I'm going out to Norway to do a couple of lectures in Bergen.
Brilliant. What we like about you as well, Gary, is that, like ourselves, we try and do good research, we try and present the facts, and then just hopefully let everybody else make their own mind up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key. You've got to try to raise the awareness, but we are struggling against a media that is determined to play down this subject. Some people say, well, I just won't get involved, but I take the attitude, well, you've got to fight back. And that's why I'm doing the debates with Chris French, because it's about time we put sceptics in the place and, cross-examine them.
Absolutely, and you're welcome on this show anytime. Keep up the good work, Gary. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Cheers. Gary Heseltine there. And as he says, he will be back in this area in Liverpool for the Exopolitics conference in August. Full details on the website planetxlive.co.uk.
Well, anything more on Gary's work, if you do go onto the forum, in the topic that's posted, guests this week, and you'll find one for Tony as well. There's a kind of resource database to Gary and Tony's websites, some links to their YouTube presentations, and to links to their latest work. So, if you want to find out more about our guests, get on the forum, have a look there, and you'll find out more information.
Yeah, and if you do get on the forum anytime this month and post anything, you'll automatically go into the draw to get tickets and a hotel if you're not from around these parts. For the June ET Communication Conference with the gang from Anthony Beckett and the gang who set the one up in Leeds, but they're coming to Liverpool, and that's in June. So, again, full details on the website. Tony Topping is back with us. He's our other UFO expert. Tony, again, we're running out of time, so there's a few little things that we wanted to talk about. You've got this... don't tell us yet, because we're going to tease it for the end, but you've got information on a certain country that you wouldn't usually associate with UFOs.
Yes, that's correct, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll talk about that in just a moment. We've got a clip that I'd like to squeeze in before we do run out of time. Now, this is a scientist who works for the NSA. Who are the NSA, just in case
the
NSA
people don't know? Are the National Security Agency, which is responsible for, basically responsible for listening into phone calls, cyber security, all that kind of thing. The equivalent in the UK is GCHQ, and they're the biggest agency in the UK, in the United States, the NSA, National Security Agency.
And this scientist is talking about implants, alien implants.
He's talking about implants, but he's also talking about the discovery about the scalar wave components to these implants and the technology from them.
Okay, let's have a listen to the clip, and then we'll try and get a little bit of discussion in before the end of the show.
Why are these individuals coming here, apparently, putting implants in people, to include naval intelligence officers, apparently, and American scientists and ordinary citizens? And what are they doing with these devices? It could be mind control in part, as you say. These devices, scalar fields, can do, these things can put out a lot of power. You think, well, it's just a tiny little thing. But they could put out maybe 300, 400 watts of power, scalar fields, and change. You wouldn't know it because they run cool. That's the property of these devices that use this scalar physics, that they don't get hot. And if the extraterrestrial material, terrestrial material, and it's emitting those scalar waves, it may be affecting your sense of time. If you're receiving radiation from a piece of material that has the different laws of physics from an older part of the universe, the electromagnetic coupling constant that is involved in the emission of the electromagnetic energy operates on a different time scale. So basically what happens is that it can move you into a kind of a time warp. Your internal clock may be running fast. You'll have something will happen. You'll have very little recollection of what happened, and maybe 2 hours. You'll check a clock somewhere, and you'll find 2 or 3 hours have gone by, and you don't know where it went to, and you have very little recollection of what happened because basically you've got a conflict here. There are two different laws of physics: the laws of physics of the extraterrestrial material, which is emitting a radiation, and the laws of physics that we have here on the rest of the Earth. it's a little difficult to explain, but basically it has to do with the age of the universe. These extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial material presumably come from an older part of the universe. The laws of physics are a little different there. The electromagnetic coupling constant is weaker, and therefore the time is different.
Okay, so there's a guy who is still working with the NSA, a scientist. He's talking about alien implants and also the fact that they can cause a distortion of time because they come from another part of the universe.
That's absolutely right. And I think one of the most fascinating comments he made with it is the fact that they run cool. And not only do they run cool, but you put less power into them and get more out. And this is kind of like baffled some of the finest scientific mind within the classifications of back-engineered technology and all that kind of thing. Could I just add, Neil, just slightly going off pace regarding Gary Heseltine, it is interesting to note that there's another police officer out there whose work is on my website. He was an analyst with a certain police force, and he was talking to his seniors about the possibility that the conspiracy regarding July the 7th, etc., was possibly an enemy within, and he was also sacked from his job. Now, that's on my website. Just very interesting, I thought, for your listeners there, and that's to do with the July.
Now, I've heard of this guy. Is this Tony?
Yeah, I've forgotten his surname, but it's...
Anybody know?
I've forgotten his surname, but
if you know, text us. I've read about him.
It's sorry to go off pace, but I just thought it's Tony, important that it sets a precedent. But yeah, that's the guy. Scalar implants, scalar magnetics, and it's Dr. Stephen Kuntz, former National Security Agency.
And have they actually got any of these implants? Have they tested them?
Yes, they have. I do recommend the work of Daryl Sims and Roger Lear.
Dr. Roger Lear.
Dr. Roger Lear, of course, and he's done some first-class research and carbon dating on some of these implants.
Right. I believe he found some extraterrestrial isotopes in some of the, even meteoric in nature.
Yes, he did. It's fascinating. Yes, he did.
I've actually seen a talk by Roger Lear.
Fascinating.
And some of the clips he's got, and we'll see if we can get them on the website, and he's actually got one clip of an implant in somebody's arm, and as soon as you go near it with a scalpel, you can actually see it travel up the arm. It's scary.
Wow.
It is scary.
It just goes to show, it's just one of those things when people say there isn't any evidence for any of these things, but it's out there.
It's ridiculous.
It's right there.
There's loads.
It's a lighthouse, for God's sake. It's a flying lighthouse. Listen, before we wrap up, you've got some interesting news on a country that you wouldn't really associate with UFOs.
Yeah, indeed so. I think that there's been some recent correspondence to say a lot of the top-level US researchers are indicating that China will be leading the way in extraterrestrial disclosure. I disagree with that because it appears to be India, of all countries, that are actually leading the way at the moment. Some of the finest scientific minds in India. Recently, there's been a finding in India, in the Indian Daily, for example, of them disclosing that the M15 star cluster has, in fact...
Is this a local paper over there?
No, it's India Daily, which is a major national publication.
Oh, right, okay.
There's a big one, and there's a lot of stuff coming out of India at the moment. And basically, they're indicating their scientists are looking at all kinds of issues to do with ET. And this was discovered by me from some mysterious sources who directed me to this. And they're indicating, basically, their scientists are indicating that the star clusters and every other cluster is like a local government administration connected to a wider governance of extraterrestrial civilizations. India appears to be the country to watch in terms of UFO disclosure. There is a link to the article, which I hope you'll put on the website for your listeners, Neil.
We certainly will. It is a fascinating subject. It is, however, a massive subject.
It's only the tip
we
of the
haven't
iceberg.
Even scratched the iceberg, have we, on tonight's show? Have we got a conclusion?
The conclusion is UFOs are real. They exist.
Indeed.
Because I've seen them. I've spent 30 years in this subject, and I've seen dish-shaped objects, no recognition lighting, no wing appendages, no sound, unusual lighting, doing strange things. I've seen them in the sky. So if I can see them, you can see them. So stop looking at the ground, look up, have a look around, because the more you look, the more you see. It's simple. You don't have to go to the hot spots around the world. I've seen them from my back garden, just on a clear night. All you got to do is look.
Tony?
Hail freedom of speech without harassment from unelected intelligence and security